Hello everybody, how is it going? It's JewJuBee here and welcome to this episode of our Let's Build a Zoo series. In this series we are building a franchise zoo, but we are building it in sandbox mode just so I can have more control over the settings. This is the main zoo of the franchise, which is in California, and we are just going to be rebuilding our maintenance facility, which is something that I've been wanting to do for a while because I didn't really like the style of it before. We're going to give it more of a modern touch to it that kind of matches the learning facility better, and we're also going to be adding an entrance to the park. So while we are building in the game, we're doing quite a big expansion here. I wanted to talk about industrialization. So for those of you who don't know, I'm actually studying to be a geophysicist so that I can work with climate change research, and most specifically with ecosystem rehabilitation and damage prevention. And in this series, each episode I'm picking a topic that has to pertain to climate change that also relates to whatever it is we're building or doing in the game. And since we are doing such a massive development in the park, I wanted to talk about industrialization. So basically industrialization, well, it's a very interesting topic because most of the time I'm on both sides of the arguments for it. On the side where I studied physics, on that side of me, I support the advancement of technology as well as mankind. But on my geology side, I'm really against industrialization for the sake of how it affects the environment as of right now. So it's kind of interesting whenever these things come up in the news or anything, how hard it is for me to pick and understand really which side is best. So industrialization is pretty much just the development of industries and other things in civilization in general on like a really widespread scale. I'm sure you're well aware of the Industrial Revolution, which I think was in the 1700s. It was just after the Black Plague kind of settled down and the population really began to boom again, and industries began to pop up like everywhere. The planet's population exploded. I think it was like at 1 billion by 1800, and then it doubled again in like in the 1920s, I believe, with the baby boom. The population had doubled again, and then by the beginning of our 21st century, so it had also grown again to to 6 billion. I think right now we're at 7.6 billion. So the population is growing. So coal is pretty much what really shifted the power. Using coal as a power source changed the way that we looked at industries from energy generation as more of like a manufacturing thought process. We've been using coal since about the 13th century, and it wasn't until the 1800s that industrialization really started to take off. Back then, we weren't really thinking about the potential impacts of burning coal and other fossil fuels just for power. It really wasn't something we were thinking about. We were mostly just thinking about growing as much as we can, as fast as we can, and as far as possible. And it's really only been recently that we started to look and actually assess the kind of impact that we were having on the environment just from like a direct result of growing so exponentially. So the biggest problem from industrialization is air pollution, which is caused by the smoke and the emissions that are created from burning things like fossil fuels. The United States EPA has regulated over more than 80 different toxins that can be found in industrial pollution, such as asbestos and lead and even chromium. In spite of these regulations, industries are among the worst generators of the air pollution in the world. Another big problem is water pollution, specifically in regions where the factories are built next to the water sources. These different toxins can be, solid, they can be liquid, sometimes they're even gas, and they end up contaminating the local water sources. And a good example of this is Flint, Michigan, where the water source is contaminated. And even landfills and other waste disposal areas can also drain toxins into the local water supply and even cause more water pollution. And another example of that is the River Nile, which is polluted from waste disposal. Now, of course, industrialization has led to a dramatic habitat destruction. Forests are cut down for their lumber, and ecosystems are destroyed to create roads and strip mines and gravel pits. And destroying these habitats really upset the local ecosystems, and they tend to lead to plants and different animals being extinct because they can't relocate or adapt to their new surroundings. I don't remember if you remember from the last episode, we talked about how the iguanas are basically infecting Florida because their environments are being, oh, sorry, my phone, their environments are being destroyed down in the Amazon, and since global warming has warmed up the planet, it is now warmer in Florida. So these iguanas are moving because they can't make life anymore in the Amazon rainforest. So they're moving into Florida, and they're actually destroying Florida's ecosystem because the Florida's not used to it, basically. So now that we really know kind of impact that things like industrialization has on the environment, we've begun to start doing things about it, but there's really only two main solutions, and it's either that the factories or our legislators take action to help reduce the impact of the pollution. So industries can reduce their resilience on products that cause the pollution, which mostly means that it's like their ability to alter their products to reduce as much pollution as possible. And a good example of this is when we removed lead from gasoline in, I think it was the 1970s. We lowered our dependency on lead significantly, which has reduced the amount of that heavy metal draining into the surrounding solution. So that's been really good. I'm sure you've heard like lead paint used to be a huge problem. We don't use lead paint anymore. So that's a good example of factories taking a step to say, lead is dangerous for people and the environment. Let's figure out a way to not need it. So that's a good example of factories taking the step. But the other option is for our legislators to start treating industrial waste, requiring it, so that these factories will start removing the toxic components from the rest of their waste that's being disposed of, and then the rest of it can be disposed of properly or safely. This is obviously not going to be an easy solution because it requires that factories would implement these procedures to purify and cleanse their waste byproducts. However, it would obviously help reduce the soil, air, and water pollution that are being produced by these factories, but it is just an expensive option, so it's really not being implemented as of right now. But industrialization may have changed the way that we looked at the world, but it has also changed the impact that we have on the planet, the planet that we call home. So now that we realize the problem, it's really time to start trying to figure out a solution so that we can grow and change without destroying our home in the name of progress. So I hope that this little lesson of industrialization, and I hope you liked it, and I hope that in the future, whenever you see new developments being made in your hometown, that you'll also think about, what environmental impacts it might have. Something as simple as building a Walmart. You never know what kind of environmental impacts that might have. So I hope that now you'll think about it and maybe, try and investigate on those things a little bit more. So I hope you really enjoyed that little lesson there. So yeah, I'm really passionate about trying to fix the planet. It's just from recent times, as things have just been really getting worse, and I've really started to study geology and physics more. I've noticed that a lot of the times things especially like industrialization and destroying habitats for the sake of progress, it's just kind of like ignorance. It's just people, not thinking about the future. They're just thinking about the now. They're just thinking about the bottom line. We'll make more money if we build a factory here, but they don't think about the fact that they're destroying ecosystems or the livelihoods of people around them. So it's just very, very interesting and very fascinating to me. And that is something I'm hoping to work with in my climate change research in the future, is rehabilitating these ecosystems for these animals who have been kicked out of where they're from, and they're trying to find a new place to live, and I'm hoping to help rehabilitate that, as well as be that person that can stand there and be like, look, no, you cannot build here, this is why, and those kind of reasons. A good example of this is in Hawaii. They're trying to build a new telescope, and the indigenous people there are like, no, you're not building it on top of this mountain. It's a very sacred mountain for us. But then the people who want to build a telescope, they're like, look, this is the best place to look at stars. So this is an example where I'm on both sides of the argument, because we can get a lot of information if we build a telescope there about stars. But I'm also like, this is their home. They might not be animals or plants or whatever, they're humans, and this is something that's precious to them. Why do we need to build a telescope here when we already have 11 other telescopes on the island? So that's another example of how industrialization, is at the forefront of political problems, and these people have been protesting at the foot of this mountain for, almost, I think, 2 years now. They've just been camped out there, just kind of, not letting the cars go past and telling them, you cannot build this telescope here. But then on the science side, they're like, look, this is the best place for us to build a telescope. So I'm on both sides of the argument. I'm constantly going back and forth on which side I agree with, because part of me, I'm like, yeah, we should look at the stars. It's important to know, where we're heading. But then also I'm like, why do we have to build it on the one mountain that these people don't want us to build it on? So it's very interesting. Hopefully you guys can look into it. But we are reaching the end of the video here. I hope you guys enjoyed just some glamour shots we have here of the entrance of the zoo. We have Le Monde Zoo, the big title here, and then on the other side we have, a see you soon sign. I did lay out some path work so that we can kind of have an idea of where we can put some habitats, and in the next few episodes we are going to be putting birds into the exhibit. So we're going to be putting some peafowls, some ostriches, and some flamingos right there by the entrance. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. I hope to see you in the next episode. Have a wonderful day, evening, night, wherever you are. Have a great day.